I don't know if you were here last week, but what happened last week happened again this week. And that means I basically had an entire talk written for continuing and almost concluding now our series in James. And I got to the end of it, and I was just like, this is not, we're not doing this. Which is weird because it's fine. It's a fine talk. I like the content. It's James, it's the Bible. But there was just after going through the whole thing, I was just like, man, I'm not excited to teach this, which is weird. And that's not necessarily the sign that I shouldn't still do it, but this has been happening a lot lately. And so to be really vulnerable with you right off the bat, I am just feeling burnt out, I think. Talking more to some of my friends that also do this, I'm just feeling burnt out on teaching lately, which I'm bummed about because I really do love doing this, but it has just been a slog lately. So earlier today, I decided to, again, throw that talk out, which is a fun thing to do on a Tuesday. And instead, I want to talk about something that I am actually excited to talk about, something that actually helps me with burnout, and something that we used to talk around here about quite a bit, but haven't as much of as late. Come on. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not going to even try to fix it because I can't do it. What we're talking about tonight is gratitude. Cicero, a famous Roman orator and philosopher, said, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the mother of all others." And I think this is one of the truest statements ever made. This is certainly borne out in my life. And I had a lot of fun, kind of frantically, putting together some of this information on gratitude. A lot of it I stole from old talks, but I love talking about the science of gratitude, learning about gratitude, and I can't wait to share that with you. I'm convinced if you are serious about joining God to incite love and reduce suffering and increase joy in the world, we should start by cultivating gratitude in our lives and helping others do the same. And there's a lot of data to support this idea. A couple of years ago, I read through a bunch of studies, particularly those by psychologist Robert Emmons, who has done so much research in this area that he's considered the expert on the psychology and science of gratitude, which is kind of a cool thing. And he has found over the course of studying thousands of people of every single age range, is that people who have cultivated a posture of gratitude tend to exhibit the following. Physically, they have stronger immune systems. They tend to exercise more and take better care of their health. They sleep longer and feel more refreshed upon waking. They have lower blood pressure. So far, I'm not checking very many boxes. Psychologically, they have higher levels of positive emotions. They are more alert and alive and awake. They tend to experience more joy, pleasure, optimism, and happiness. And socially, it doesn't just affect them internally, but it spills out into their social interactions. They tend to be more helpful and generous and compassionate, more forgiving, more outgoing, feeling less lonely and isolated. I think those last parts are really important because gratitude doesn't just affect our internal world. It affects how we relate to one another. Gratitude draws us out of ourselves towards others. And that is precisely because, according to Dr. Emmons, gratitude is a two-part process. First, we recognize that we have obtained a positive outcome. And second, we recognize that there is an external source for this positive outcome. So in other words, we recognize the good that we have received, and we recognize the source of that good being outside of us. It's a simple idea, but it really has profound consequences. Why? Why does gratitude tend to have those list of benefits that I rattled off? I think it is because gratitude changes the way that we interpret reality. There are a number of ways this happens, but I want to hit a few that I found interesting. First, gratitude rewires our brains to celebrate rather than adapt. Our brains crave novelty, newness, and we find joy and satisfaction in novelty. At the same time, we as humans are highly adaptable creatures, which is a problem then. We are constantly quickly adapting to every new thing or experience that we have, which can quickly lead to dissatisfaction. Our economy runs on and depends on you being this way. It's why Apple and Samsung and Google make new phones every year or every 6 months sometimes. I have an iPhone 12 that I got way, way, way back in the fall of 2020, if you can remember back then. My phone does everything I need it to do and more, and lots of things I wish it didn't do. But it's several generations old already. Why? Because we want and will pay for the new thing. Gratitude rewires our brains to celebrate goodness rather than adapt to it. Gratitude celebrates the value of something or someone. Gratitude helps you savor, which helps you enjoy that thing or experience or person more. It makes you less likely to take things for granted. And when you notice the positive more, the pleasure that you derive from your life is magnified, obviously. Gratitude literally helps us experience more joy in our lives. That fits really well with something that David Stenzel Rast says, who's a Benedictine monk, who, if you have 7 minutes to kill, just Google his TED Talk on gratitude. He says this: "It is not joy that makes us grateful, it is gratitude that makes us joyful." Another way that gratitude changes the way that we interpret reality is that it counteracts or defeats the negative and destructive reactions that we have to bad and negative things that happen. It's true in the moment, and it's also true about past events, which is part of what makes gratitude so powerful. First, in the moment, gratitude counteracts things like envy. It's really hard to envy someone else if you're relating to your life with a posture of gratitude. Every once in a while I get in these seasons, like when the lotto gets really high, or like when I see random social media posts of just people who live insanely wealthy lives. Every once in a while I start to get envious of people who just have never had to worry about money. And then if I will spend a morning just walking around my house thinking about how freaking cool it is that I have a house, it immediately counteracts those feelings of envy and of wanting to buy lotto tickets. It powerfully can stop those brain patterns in their tracks. Along the same lines, gratitude pushes back against resentment. I've been pretty honest with y'all lately about how challenging a season that Michaela and I have been in with our kids, which is nothing unusual. It's very normal stuff. They're loud all the time. They make messes everywhere. They're really testing boundaries right now and like high-fiving each other while they do it. So they're like testing boundaries together. They're not listening well right now. And they want to be with me all the freaking time, which feels really dumb to complain about. Like, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I feel ridiculous saying that. This is like everything I just rattled off is everything that I hoped and dreamed for before I had kids. But the past few days, I've developed this resentment towards them. And I found myself trying to avoid them. Like, go play outside, or like, just leave me alone, rather than seeing them as like the most important people for me to be spending time with right now. And so this morning I was trying to process these feelings of being annoyed and frustrated and resentful to these two tiny, adorable people. And I felt like really devastated about it. And I was trying to process what's going on in my heart, because this isn't what I want for us, obviously. And I decided to just start focusing on what I'm grateful for. And it completely reversed everything that I was feeling and opened the floodgates, honestly. I'm so grateful that I have two beautiful kids. I'm so grateful that I have two beautiful kids who are healthy enough to make messes all over the place. That I'm so grateful that they are enjoying themselves so much that they can't help but just scream all the time. Like, it's sounds of joy. They're ear-piercing and they hurt, but they're having a great time. I'm so grateful that they feel safe enough to test boundaries and that they're not scared of me. They might need to be a little bit more scared of me than they are, but I grew up terrified of my dad, and it was one thing that I did not want to do again. And I think I probably erred too far on the other side, but I'm so grateful that I have kids that love me and actually want to be around me, because I know that that's only going to be for a little bit longer, that they want to be around me, at least like they do now. And I don't want to squander these precious days feeling annoyed and resentful and trying to find ways to avoid them. I mean, we all need breaks. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But this has been like a shift in my posture towards them that needed to change. And really, over the course of about 5, maybe 10 minutes, gratitude helped me regain a perspective and posture that I want to have toward them. And honestly, like, it didn't stop there. It just sent me on a trail of gratitude. Like, I'm grateful I can give them toys that they just make a mess with all the time. I'm grateful for the house that I have for them to make messes in. I'm grateful for Michaela to be doing this alongside of, and the way that she always encourages me when I'm feeling like a failure of a father. Just like a little bit of gratitude just undid me. Because gratitude changes the way that we interpret our reality. This is also true of past events. We've all experienced painful things that have hurt us or embarrassed us, things that weren't fair, things that we replay in our heads over and over again. We can continue to interact with those things in a negative way and allow those moments to continue to make us bitter and resentful about what happened. Or we can look back with gratitude and be grateful that we made it through that time, or grateful for the things that we learned, or the ways that we were shaped by those experiences. Maybe even grateful that that thing happened to us. Maybe not, but maybe. I can honestly say that I am grateful for probably 99% of the events of my life. I'm for 99% of the events of my life that led up to and contributed to and include my struggles with addiction. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about humans in general. I developed compassion for people who are broken. There are so many things that I don't think I would have learned that are fundamental to who I am today if I hadn't been through that darkness. And I don't want to go through it again at all, ever. And I don't wish it on anyone else. But I'm truly grateful for it today and the ways that it's shaped me. Gratitude doesn't ignore bad things. It's not about just like only thinking positive thoughts. It doesn't pretend that bad things aren't bad. It remembers the bad, but it helps us see the good in a very real way. Gratitude increases joy in our lives and counteracts and reframes our suffering. It doesn't deny that it happens, but it lets us see the full picture of what happened. So what are some obstacles to gratitude, to developing a posture of gratitude in our lives? There are many, but for instance, entitlement, I think, is a huge barrier to gratitude. If we think that we've earned something or that we deserve something, we're rarely grateful for it. I think entitlement is probably a big issue in our culture currently. But for me, and maybe for you, I think a bigger barrier to gratitude in my life is cynicism. A refusal to see the good, which in the terms that we've been talking about tonight is a denial of reality. I tend to view things, I'm getting better at this, but there is still a root in my head that tends to view things dualistically, either good or bad. I especially do this with people I look up to, which is part of why I have such a hard time with politics. If I can find any sort of shortcoming in someone who's vying for influence over me, I bail. I do this with a lot of things. If I can find any bad, then it's like, it's all bad, right? Which is just a really immature way to look at the world. But because most things are both, right? Both good and bad to at least some degree. Which means I just view most things as bad and dwell on that. Which means I dwell on a false view of reality that obsesses on just the bad. And maybe the biggest takeaway for me in studying gratitude for the past few years was realizing that my cynicism is rarely the result of me seeing bad in the world. It's almost always actually my refusal to see any good. Cultivating a posture of gratitude helps me to open my clenched fists and see the good, because gratitude changes the way that we interpret reality. You can see this in Scripture in the life of Jesus. A few years ago, I was reading the entry on gratitude in the Spiritual Disciplines Handbook by Adele Calhoun, which is a fantastic resource, by the way. If you're ever interested in that, I will send you a link to it. But in her entry for gratitude, she talks about this famous story about Jesus that I had heard 1,000,000 times, maybe even more than 1,000,000 times, but I never saw it from this angle. And when I talk about it, you might wonder why I chose this story or feel like maybe it's a stretch, which I totally understand. But There's this famous story of Jesus caught in a really tough spot where he's just taught this crowd of thousands of people, and they are all now hungry, and they're looking to him and his disciples to feed them. And all they can scrounge up from among the crowd is 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. You've all heard this story, right? And rather than scoff and complain that God really should have provided more if he wanted all of these people fed, Jesus doesn't write off this meager food as nothing. Jesus sees what he has been given, and he is thankful for it. He gives thanks for it. And from that, God does something really amazing and beautiful, and the whole crowd is fed to their fill. Thousands and thousands of people from just these tiny bits of food. Now, I'm not saying like this is always the result of gratitude. Like gratitude isn't a tactic to use in an equation to get what we want. But it's a posture that changes the way that we interpret reality. If I were in his position, I would have been resentful and overwhelmed. What on earth am I supposed to do with just this? Like I would be entitled. I shouldn't have to deal with this. This is not my problem. And I'd probably be cynical. Like, why is the world so messed up that people are starving, and why is that my problem to solve? The last thing on my mind, honestly, would be to thank God for what I have in that moment. I'd be mad at him for allowing that situation to exist at all. Take it out of this story. How do you tend to react in pressurized and problematic situations? More often than not, I don't react out of a posture of gratitude. I react out of a posture of cynicism and self-consciousness. I would complain about it and then try to fix it. My default would not be to just stop and be grateful for what I have, but lament what I don't have and be bitter and resentful about it. So what I take away from this is that when that is my default posture, entitlement and cynicism rather than gratitude, if nothing else, I am forfeiting opportunities to see God do beautiful things. I'm refusing to see the beautiful things happening all around me. And that's not who I want to be. In James, the book that we're supposed to be studying, at the very beginning in chapter 1, he writes, "Every desirable and beneficial gift comes out of heaven. These gifts are rivers of light cascading down from the Father of light." I want to be someone who sees those gifts. I want to be someone who sees more of reality and not just one side of it. I want to be someone that recognizes the gifts that God has given to me. I want to be someone that's full of gratitude. So, if you are like me and want more gratitude in your life, what are ways that we can cultivate this posture? That's a great question. Thank you for asking. All the research basically agrees. The best way to cultivate more and more gratitude in your life is by doing something incredibly simple. Keep track of the things that you're thankful for, daily or at least weekly. Dr. Emmons says that this is the most effective way to build gratitude is to keep a gratitude journal and record at least 3 things every day that you are thankful for. It can literally just be like you write down 3 words. But his studies show that people start seeing the benefits of these practices in just about 3 weeks' time. And they start to build the more that you stick with it. Just 3 weeks of being grateful. Just 3 weeks of being more positive and happier in your life just because you're noticing the things that are good. What would it look like for you to cultivate a practice of gratitude by praying through and journaling a few things that you're thankful for every day? It seems really simple, like so simple that it kind of feels silly to do. But I assure you, it is not as simple as it sounds. But it's also not nearly as complicated as we tend to think things are. Recognize the good. Recognize God as the source of that good. There's just under 3 weeks left in July. So what if you join me and committed to doing this daily for the remainder of the month? And just see what that begins to produce in your life. I know that if you stick with it, you will see and you will find a shift in the way that you interpret reality. You will find a shift in the way that you interpret reality that leads to more joy and less suffering. not a denial of reality, a broader and fuller view of reality. It's such a simple but powerful way to join God in inciting love and reducing suffering and increasing joy in the world. Not just for the people around us, but for us as well. Would you pray with me? God, thank you for my friends in this room who are way ahead of me when it comes to seeing a fuller picture of reality and seeing good in the world. God, thank you for simple reminders and simple practices to help us be more aware of you, to notice what you're doing, to notice the ways that you have blessed us. God, help us to grow in our awareness of how blessed and loved we are so that we can use the ways that you have blessed and loved us to bless and love others. God, I pray that we would each grow in our posture of gratitude these next few weeks as we commit to doing this together. We love you, God. Amen.